3 thick bricks.
Last time on 3 Thick Bricks Living in the Past.
A compilation album, but so much more.
Oh, yes. So much more.
And so much less.
And now, the spine-chilling conclusion, sides 3 and 4.
So, side 3.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a real departure, isn't it? What's going on here?
And you did to fill out more sides, and they didn't have enough singles and things?
That's the first thought. They've had
Well, also, I think it's a celebration of their live set. I mean, they were known for their live performances.
Exactly.
I'm not sure it's successful, though, in that sense. I don't... sometimes live albums can be incredibly successful. They can capture, a band, playing live. I don't know that...
There's Bursting Out is the famous Jethro Tull one.
Yeah, I'm not sure that this succeeds in doing that, and so it feels more like a bit of a filler because the choices of the things that they've chosen to put on there is a bit curious.
It is curious. Now, I've been thinking about this, so I'd agree. My original thought was they had 3/4 of a double album, and they needed to fill out another side. But if they're going to, I see this album as a statement of their musical history up to this point, and a document, basically like their CV, and their live performance is a very important part of who they were as a band, right? So I don't think having live material there is unusual, but why choose these ones is correct. I guess to reproduce album tracks and singles, because a lot of purpose of this album was to introduce music that people hadn't heard before. In album format, and to reproduce tracks from albums or singles in live versions would be a bit odd, so I understand that. And I guess the other thing is that both of these tracks demonstrate their enthusiasm for live performance. So a lot of bands, I've certainly seen a lot of bands, even ones I like, who turn up, bang out the tracks that as quickly as they can that the audience want to hear, and they're done. And Tull are basically demonstrating here with these long improvisational tracks their energy and their musical talent, but also that they're there to stay and they're there to deliver to the audience something. They're not there to perform and go. And both of these tracks demonstrate musical virtuosity, but also a willingness to perform. You probably know I think I might have discussed. I like the band Tool quite a bit, and there's a quite good. I can't remember which track it is, but it's Maynard Keenan announcing the last. He said, "This is the last song," and the audience going, "No, more," and he turns around and says, "No, it's not going to be 3 minutes long. We're not Green Day." Whatever we're going to do is going to be 12 minutes long, and that's these the willingness to do this sort of demonstrates a respect for the audience in some respect, that it's not just quick performance of singles and out of there. So I kind of see that that's what these tracks are about, and maybe why they chose them.
Yeah, but by kind commission of could have been John Evans plays a bit, and isn't he good on the keyboard? Yes. And Dharma for one could be Clive Bunker's quite a good drummer. Well, because they feel like they featured them more than anything.
No, I don't know. Well, maybe Dharma. I don't think Dharma for one features the drum solo quite as much as the album.
It's nothing like the original.
It's the album version. I think there's much more of the band in this version of the. Anyway, so what about by kind permission of?
I mean, John Evans is just incredible. I mean, he's sort of like Gershwin and Jelly Roll Morton.
He plays various things.
He's obviously classically trained. I mean, that's Beethoven at the beginning, isn't it? It's one of the sonatas. It's one of the sonatas at the beginning. that I recognise, and I'm sure there's more in there. But then there's,
yeah, I mean, and then he's got blues. I mean, he basically
in there, yeah.
there's also jazz improvisation.
Jazz
in the middle.
improvisation.
I mean, it really is.
It's all there. I mean, the guy can play, and
Yeah, it's true. Whether you need to know that, whether you need 12 minutes of it to demonstrate that, I don't know. So, I'd be very happy for it to have been done in some other way. But I kind
The thing
of
about this side is that, I thought, oh God, it's these live songs. They're just really long. Do I have to really listen to them? I always skip them in the past. And then I started to listen to them. And they were so familiar. I mean, obviously I had actually listened to them a fair bit, and they're not really my thing. And yes, they are very long, and yes, I wouldn't have them on sort of rotational listening, but it was still a good listen. I mean, especially, he starts off with the piano noodling and all the classical bit, but then the rest of the band starts to join in, and it sort of becomes, pretty.
Well, they
full on
do
and
that
good.
at the very end. So that's kind of.
But the flute joins
cool
in
when he
quite
says,
a bit.
"Go!"
Yeah.
And whatever "ooh-yah" means. So.
Ooh yeah, ooh yeah.
I mean, if you were stoned, it would be awesome, probably.
So, this is our take on it, but what's really interesting is, I've said my wife hates this period of music, and I was obviously listening to this recently in preparation for this, and she said, "What's that?" She said, "That's not Jethro Tull, is it?" I said, "Yes," and she said, "Oh," because she loves jazz, and a lot of she loved the By Kind Permission of.
Yeah.
It doesn't grab me particularly.
No.
I can admire it, but it's just.
I think, like Adrian said, I've heard it a lot. It's almost like I've heard it a lot because I've listened to this album so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It did seem like I was surprised at how familiar it seemed to me.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I knew it really well.
Yeah.
But it feels like a sort of improvised, jazzy kind of classical jazzy kind of thing, doesn't it?
Which is what it is. It's really a showcase, and this is what they did. They would showcase. That's what drum solos are about and guitar solos are about. That just doesn't happen in music these days, but it did then, and that's what this was about.
Yeah.
It's almost like a sort of similar to Bore, isn't it? It's like taking the classical song and then messing around with it to make it a bit different.
I also do wonder if, as a benefit concert, whether they felt liberated to
Possibly.
be a little bit more ad lib.
Yeah, possibly. That's true. Possibly. And also, like you said, practically it allows people to go off stage and refresh themselves and come back kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Ian Anderson obviously didn't, because he can hear a little flute. He joins in with the flute every now and again.
He probably took the microphone into the bathroom with him.
they probably wanted to know what the package was anyway. They're probably like, oh, what's in the package?
It's fingernails.
I love the way he says, because it might contain contraband. I love that. It's so funny.
But it's but then the end of By Permission Of is obviously that's not improvised, that's planned, but it feels it's that's good. I like the really rocky end to it. And Dharma for one.
Oh my God, I'd forgotten, actually. I talk about knowing this. I had forgotten about this song. And I'm like, first of all, I love the intro to it, which is hilarious. I wish I'd heard the rest of it. She's really turned on by the television or vice versa. And I'm thinking, what's the rest of the story? Because this is hilarious. But the thing is, this is like a gothic rock requiem they've turned this into. It's the weirdest thing. Oh my God. With the kind of the voices all going, Dharma, Dharma, Dharma. It's like, oh.
I've got to say, I do like Dharma on This Was, and I think there's actually some good aspects to this this version of it. There's a lot more involvement with the rest of the band. The drum solo is actually not dominating. It's not that long compared to what's on the album.
Compared to the rest of the song,
I'm not a fan of the organ introduction. I do like the way on the album on This Was that it just goes bang straight into it. And I like it as an instrumental. I'm not a huge fan of the...
It's really
singing.
gothic and weird and sort of chanting and I mean, it really is
Well, it's like a hippie commune, isn't it? That's what I always thought. It's like people in purple roads kind of swaying along, going Dharma, 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 Dharma. Yes, it's very, very odd. But yeah, this is interesting because usually the rest of the band doesn't get a voice in, a shoe in, whatever in, as far as the vocals go. But they're all at it here. Clive Bunker, Martin Barre, and John Evan apparently all helping with the vocal backing. It makes you wonder why they didn't do that more. I mean, again, I love harmony, but it's very rare.
So this is actually the guitar work on it's good. That sort of, again, it's that chopping. I don't know whether he's palm muting or fretboard muting, but that he does on Aqualung. But he doesn't really do that anywhere else, but he does it here. And there's the bass line, which is obviously Glenn Cornick, is great as well. It's just like whenever I hear it, that sort of I think of one-horned, one-eyed flying purple people eater. I don't know why, but that's what that makes me think of. But that's really cool. It's a good version of Dharma. I prefer the album version.
Yeah, I do too. Actually, this feels a bit overworked.
But it's incredibly energetic, isn't it? And I think that's what they're trying to convey.
They're trying, but I think
that's the purpose of putting it. Yeah, the purpose of putting it on the album. So.
Yeah. And I suppose if you were there or you went to a Jethro Tull concert live,
you'd be swaying and Dharma-ing along with them.
You'd probably remember it in that sense. But I mean,
because you'd be on drugs, so
yeah. I mean, of the four sides, this side is not a side I'm overly.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting.
Yeah,
but it's not.
Yeah, it's not something I tend to listen to.
Yeah,
the other interesting thing is that before we sort of pointed out a few issues with the production and recording of it, like I was particularly critical of the old Dharma for one, for example. But strangely, even though this is live, the sound quality is pretty good. I mean, it's surprisingly good. It sort of seems strange to me that they could the sound quality of just like an ad hoc recording for a session like this could be as good. I
wonder if it was ad hoc though. And sometimes there's an intention. This was obviously a special concert, right?
Yeah, but that's different. Like having a specialist, being in a specialist studio recording music.
But I think if it's a difference to some. Well, it wouldn't have happened in 1970, but it's a difference from someone holding up their iPhone and it actually being recorded through the mixing desk. If there was an intention to record it straight up, and this was a special concert, it was obviously a charity concert in Carnegie Hall, so it might have been given extra treatment and extra attention when it was actually
because Carnegie Hall was used for classical concerts and all kinds of things, so it would have been one of the few venues that was probably set up to properly
record things and record a big ensemble sound as well.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's probably why the quality is so good. I mean, if it had been in the sort of Wyoming Working Men's Club, whatever, it probably wouldn't have been quite as sounded quite as good. But I think Carnegie Hall clearly was set up to record music live in a really in a high quality way.
Are we done talking about side 3?
Yes,
because I think we're going to have to need about an hour to discuss the first track on side 4.
Side 4.
Side 4. Now this side is mostly an EP, which I hadn't realised. So I'll talk about that when we reach it, because I think for me it's very interesting. But the first 2 tracks are not. From that.
What is an EP? For those of us who weren't around when the gramophone was invented, what's an EP?
Extended play.
So it's like an LP, but not as L.
But not as L. It's more E than L.
It's when you buy a song and Apple gives you a sort of a digital benefit. You get an extra digital tracks or something.
You stick it on the turntable. and go, where the fuck is the rest of the album? So that's it. That's what
That's
an EP
all I
is.
get for £3.
So, Wond'ring again.
Yeah, what a brilliant song. Jeez.
Yeah.
A polemic and an environmental polemic and a love song all tied into one. Wow, you wouldn't think they'd go together, would you?
I think we can safely say, I don't know what was going on with Locomotive Breath, but I don't believe. I find it very hard to interpret that, but this is clearly and very visionary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Patient.
Yeah, I mean, it shows Anderson was already very strongly environmentally conscious even back then, and I think that became more of a focus for him. You know, when we got into Stormwatch and things like that, it became much more of a focus. But even back in the '70s, early '70s, we can see that his concern for the planet and for the environment is, and it's that thing about global and local and global and personal. He manages to do both at the same time in the one song, which is quite astounding.
That's the whole. Actually, I hadn't thought of it until now. I don't know. Do you gentlemen know Ken Burns, the documentary maker?
Yeah. I've seen his jazz one and Prohibition. Yeah.
And his Civil War one's one of his most famous, and his great talent is being able to talk about the great story and focus in on the individual within that story, and that's what we're talking about here.
Yes,
is a cosmic concept.
Yep,
and its effect at the personal level, which makes it much more immediate and much more compelling.
Yeah, the whole stumbled on a daffodil which she crushed in the rush. Yeah. Heard it sigh and left it to die. I mean, it's just...
That's really focusing in.
Yeah, so poignant and personal, as you say.
I prefer Wond'ring Aloud musically, maybe because it's a bit briefer. But this song is unique and it's special in itself, and I don't consider them the same. I don't understand the linking of them.
To me, they're not really very similar at all.
I don't understand the linking of them. I think they're both unique and separate songs with a similar... Although, if, Wond'ring Aloud, will the years treat us well? This might be one answer to that.
Well, I always
I
always link the second half of Wond'ring Again with Wond'ring Aloud, because I mean the first part of Wond'ring Again clearly is just talking broadly about environmental and other issues. But I always thought the second half of Wond'ring Again was related to Wond'ring Aloud because it's the same people. Now, whether it's
I can see that. I can see that because it just hones back into that personal.
Yeah, and to me, Wond'ring Again is less powerful without Wond'ring Aloud. I think, yes, you can hear them both separately, but the love and the togetherness of Wond'ring Aloud then feeds into Wond'ring Again when it comes back to the two of them in that way.
And given the care that goes into constructing these songs, you wouldn't put it past them to have made that connection, even if it's not overtly stated. That transition from the general global concern and the lead up to the aftermath is very effective.
Yeah, it is.
That makes the song. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, because if there'd been two separate songs, because you could have had Wond'ring Aloud Again, just the second bit, and then sort of some other song about global catastrophe.
There's the stillness of death and so on. Yeah,
it is, like you said, that Ken Burns effect of the global and the personal makes it much more.
It's sort of moving to that big concept of ecological overload and the political causes to the aftermath, which is just that quietly acoustic. I think I've even listened to it again. It's so strongly evocative of a post-apocalyptic world that that's that quiet. We wandered through quiet lands. That sort of a quiet. And it's
Search for the Last Pigeon.
It feels like a novel almost. It's in a way not look, post-apocalyptic fiction and movies are very popular at the moment. This feels more John Wyndham and the Chrysalids than sort of Rick Grimes and zombies. It's that very sort of desolate, quiet, depopulated earth.
Wow,
very effective.
Okay. It's interesting that you... Okay.
The music conveys that very strongly to me, that transition to that very quiet acoustic. And it... Just the very first line, we wandered through quiet lands, and I find that very, very effective.
And, he just sums up such simple terms of affairs, just like the slate grey. I've been told, just gives you such an insight into the a pigeon, which is the rat of the skies, as we know. I mean, they're unkillable and everywhere, but he doesn't even know what colour. Doesn't even know
pigeons, as my daughter calls them. Yeah.
He doesn't even know what colour a pigeon is. And it just really immediately and just so brings it home to you that just sums it up in such a succinct way. It's amazing.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. It's interesting that you saw it that way. Wow. Okay. I never saw it as a post-apocalyptic piece at all.
Really?
No.
Okay. What did you see it as?
Well, I
like
always...
a Benny Hill comedy.
That's right. Yeah, that's how I took it. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily about Anderson, but Wond'ring Aloud is about two people in love in a very domestic setting, and sharing the values of their concern for the environment. They live in a kind of a more rustic setting. So then Wond'ring Aloud is, yes, it's about their concerns, but then it brings them back to their own lives. It's the edge of winter. It's the beginning of winter. They're walking through their local rural heartland. So it's not post-apocalyptic in that sense, but their cozy, rustic kind of existence.
There's a stillness of death on the fucking deathly unliving sea. How much post-apocalypse do you want? The world's turning its side.
But I don't see them as connected in that obvious way. I think Anderson's talking about his concern about the environment broadly, but then it's back to reality and it's back to their lives. Yeah,
but I mean, as Brent says, the wandering through quiet lands, and again, the line about the pigeon, he doesn't know what colour a pigeon is. To me, that really...
Yeah, I feel quite strongly... No, that's... that again, all of these are open to interpretation, but the tragedy of destroying a tiny piece of what life still exists on the planet, being the daffodil. The bit about the pigeon, as Adrian has mentioned, and the surprise of new birth and life. You surprise the world by producing new life, because really, as far as where the world's at, life is heading for extinction. And
well, you see, but the thing is, it's a bit too. It feels far too hopeful and domestic at the end to be about that.
I don't think so. I think that's just an expression of hope.
Yeah, wonder and hope, because they've managed to
it ends with hope. It's a very, I mean, it's a dark and depressing song in a way, but there is new hope at the end because a child is born.
It's interesting that it's refreshing to hear a different interpretation, because I'd never thought of it
absolutely.
that way.
No, absolutely. And this is, as of all of these songs, good music and good lyrics are open to interpretation
and right and wrong.
And on a much more important note, we obviously had a great attachment to this song because we did name our role-playing team after a line from it. I don't know why we thought bubbling excrement was a clever thing to name out. I think we thought that was a very Cthulhu type sort of thing you'd find in some sort of cultist's lair. Was bubbling excrement.
Exactly.
Maybe a bit of a stupid name.
No, it's an awesome name.
A bit of a stupid.
It's an awesome name. No one ever forgot that name.
No, it's true. The funny thing is that for some reason, mentally, I always thought the line was from Thick as a Brick.
Ah, yeah,
It kind
okay.
of feels like it fits in there, but then every time I hear it in here, I go, "Oh, yes, that's right, it's from here." But my brain wants to.
You think that
Have
you think
it
the
as thick as
wise
a
man
brick.
broke wind and followed through? Did
The
you?
thing about bubbling excrement is that actually to get the excrement bubbling, it needs to be of
Yeah,
a
it's-
How
particular
do you do that?
particular
You have to
volume
have
and
a
consistency, and then you'd have to heat it up.
Well,
You know,
I think you've got to have it. Yeah, I think you've got to have a particularly nasty curry the day before.
but I always imagine a pot of the stuff. You know, just gently
Yes,
gently
yeah.
simmering. You know,
The witch.
Yep. It's funny because like I never really thought of Wond'ring Aloud and Wond'ring Again as particularly similar musically, but you can kind of fit the lyrics in quite easily.
I mean, it's the same melody, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a theme about wondering about things.
And the giving and taking. That's the main thing for me is just the give and take.
It's only it's only the giving that makes you what you are. Is kind of fairly straightforward. It's only the taking that makes you what you are. How do you read that?
That's interesting because we used to talk about that when we were younger, didn't we? About what that meant. So greed and overpopulation, sort of breeding like rabbits and consuming all your resources, is kind of what the first side's about, and that's about taking, right?
Yeah. So that's the consumer mentality.
But it's in the second part of the song, which is the much more personal part of the song.
But there's also a bit like the spilling crumbs, the taking of moments and enjoying them with whoever you're with. So,
Yeah,
when people give you things, like in the case of It's Only the Giving What You Are, it's how you take that giving as well that's important.
Yeah. I think there's that we're our own agents of creation and our own agents of destruction. We can destroy things, we can create things. And it's easy to focus on the first Wond'ring Aloud, which is all about the romantic love and sort of giving to others. But that's only one side of the coin. The other side is we take from others. We take what they give, but we also destroy things. We also destroy life. Our very existence means the destruction of life from an environmental perspective. And so we're yin and yang. That's what makes us who we are, and I find that quite profound that he talks
where's
about
the balance?
that. Yeah,
Where's the balance?
Yep.
And maybe
Yep,
at the
yep.
end, looking for the new path they're going to walk with the child. Maybe seeking that balance is the
yes, exactly. Oh, well, one thing is that I really don't like a lot of songs that Anderson does about religion, but I think he's a very spiritual person, and I think that comes through very strongly. And I find that much more satisfying about him than a lot of his, his sort of, his hymn 43s or the God ones and things.
Yeah,
and this is an example of that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, again, he's not providing what he considers to be the answers to these problems. He's just kind of saying, well, here's a problem. If I think about what it means to you, not here's a problem and I've solved it.
Yeah. Yeah. Life, it's a long song, isn't it?
No. Hymn 43.
Oh, okay.
And then we skip over that, and life's a long.
But have we talked about hymn 43 in the last one?
I think
We have to address the fact that it's here. So it's the second track on this side. So it's obviously Aqualung's
choice.
The choice of track for Aqualung. But it was not it is the choice on our US versions. It was not the choice on the UK version.
What did they have on the UK one?
Locomotive Breath.
Well, much better choice.
No, I like hymn
I
43
think hymn
more.
43 was included on the US version because it was the single that was released.
And it sings about the US, so
So it was recognisable and it was relevant to
Yeah.
the US, maybe.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I prefer it. I'm sorry, I actually
think that's the
prefer
reason
hymn
it's there.
43 to Locomotive Breath.
Oh, well, that's
That's just crazy talk. That's
it is. Adrian and I do respect your right to be wrong, Robin. We've said this a number of times. But
I wouldn't say that as insane, but No way it is. It is pretty insane.
The next 5 tracks are an EP
Right.
that was released after Aqualung. Did you realise that? The Life's a Long Song EP.
Oh, I definitely 100% realised
But
it.
they don't. Why did they don't even link together? I don't really see why they would have made an EP of them. Were they just?
I didn't know this. So Life's a Long Song, the EP with these 5 tracks, was released in between Aqualung and Thick as a Brick.
Probably just,
never
we
knew.
just had these extra songs.
I hadn't realised till I researched this. I just assumed they were just tracks at the end of this album and that were just included, but they were all released as an EP. And I find that very, very interesting because one of these songs in particular I love. It's actually my favourite acoustic of all of Ian Anderson's acoustic songs.
Oh, for later.
No, Nursie.
Oh, acoustic. Sorry, I thought you meant instrumental. Oh, yeah, okay.
No, acoustic. Okay. So it's unusual. So
It's an interesting mix of songs.
and like the rest of us, most people probably wouldn't have realised this was an EP. So it was probably there wasn't time. It was released maybe in the UK, and then suddenly Living in the Past with these songs on it was released, and they became part of this album. But it was an EP in its own right, and these 5 songs were released between Aqualung and Thick as a Brick as an EP, and that begs the question of why. I wasn't aware that they'd released any other EP. Sorry, Adrian, were you genuine in your question about what an EP was?
Well, I did know what an EP was, but I did not realise that they'd done any EPs or that this was an EP.
No, exactly. So I'm wondering here.
Wondering
I really
aloud.
like a number of the tracks. Not wondering aloud.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice of 5 songs to put together on
Yeah, it's like
an EP. I mean, it's quite kaleidoscopic, isn't it?
Well,
I mean, like Up the Pool and Dr. Bogenbroom, they're quite different songs.
yeah, there are actually some great songs, really good songs here. I wonder, and I was talking about the path they might have taken. You were talking about Thick as a Brick maybe being a reaction, and I think it was a reaction to critical commentary on Aqualung, right? These 5 songs, some of which are excellent, look like the kernel of another album. And I do wonder, and I think, songs like Dr. Bogenbroom and Life's a Long Song are actually...
Yeah.
They're not introspective in the way that Benefit was, but they seem to be a more mature direction of what was attempted on Aqualung on social commentary that's
Themes.
that's actually personal, and maybe even better done than they are in Aqualung. And then bang, it's aborted, and they go into Thick as a Brick and Passion Play. This looks like another direction Tile might have taken to me, and this looks like the beginning of an album. And I wonder whether this is what that was, and it was aborted because of the decision to go and do something like Thick as a Brick.
Yep.
Could it also have been just leftover stuff from Aqualung that didn't get it onto Aqualung?
It was recorded. It was all recorded after.
Okay.
It was from later.
It was recorded after, and it was from later, but it was specifically recorded and then released as an EP, and immediately the EP disappeared because it appeared in its entirety on this album, where it's remained ever since.
And you can see it could almost be maybe he decided to sort of press the eject button on it too, because it is a bit similar to the stuff in Aqualung. Like you've got up the pool, which is kind of like Mother Goose, if you like. It's like
exactly, but I think maybe I feel like we'll talk about it shortly, but I think Life's a Long Song is an amazing song, and I think there's a maturation and a development of what he was doing on Aqualung. They were doing an Aqualung, and this feels like another direction they might have gone, and maybe a more satisfying direction, but it feels like it was stopped prematurely, and they decided to go on another.
Because I could certainly see pretty much all of these songs forming like half an album to
Exactly.
be fleshed out or with other songs.
Exactly. I feel like that's what it feels to me like that's what happened, and then it was prematurely released as an EP when they decided to go into the studio and record Thick as a Brick.
So I wonder, how did the EP do? Because it seems a shame that they would. I guess they made up for it by releasing it here too.
Exactly, and the fact that they didn't just take parts of it, but just plonked the whole thing on the fourth side of this album would suggest that the EP was not really intended as a enduring standalone release. I don't know. It's not something I've researched or looked into, but this is where they were going after Aqualung, and suddenly they went to Thick as a Brick. So the tracks.
Life is a long song, unless it isn't.
This is my favourite Tull acoustic song. His acoustic work in this is incredible, and this was This was maybe didn't stand out for me as much. This was absolutely consolidated for me when we saw them live. In fact, it's the only part of the performance that I distinctly remember because I was mesmerised by it. And that really consolidated it as a favourite for me, and particularly as my favourite acoustic.
Yeah, it's a
track
fantastic
of
piece.
all of their many acoustic tracks. So.
And again, it's got this sort of like 3-part story to it. The sort of living your best life, and then kind of being worn down, and then finally the ignominious end. So yeah, it's quite a
it's interesting. I used to think it was about suicide, but it doesn't. The whole thing doesn't. Spilling your pain all over your new dress, but
yeah, that's
again,
it's
more
just
just
adding
up to that.
type of.
Yeah, it's just life has ended, and however it ends, again, it's a bit like Witch's Promised. It's a sort of more of an I saw it as a more of an allegorical end. Like you could end with your the train squishing your brains on the track, or you could just end because it's a life goes on, is a long life, and then you die. But so.
I mean, for me, it's more that the drudgery of daily life in London can seem like it's never ending. But I think what he's saying is life's a long song, It's maybe the way your life is now, but,
Yeah, there is hope.
Tune in's too soon.
Yeah, but, we will meet in the sweet light of dawn. There's hope at the end.
So, it's the rainy, dreary London isn't everything, and it's not going to last forever. But aren't they meeting the sweet light of dawn just before they get run over by the train? I mean, is that really that? What is this running over by a train? The Baker Street train spills your pain all over your new dress.
And the symphony sounds underground, puts you under duress.
I always thought that was a suicide. That's what
I know. I took it as much more kind of.
Don't you squeal as the wheels grind you under the heels?
No,
it's all like you've fallen on the tracks.
I turned much more prosaic.
The symphony sounds underground. It's like the squealing of the brakes as the train's trying to stop.
It's more the drudgery every day.
It's allegorical, but
It is about the apocalypse. No. I love the beginning. I love that line. It's almost Shakespearean.
Yeah.
It's you're falling awake at the that you don't spring awake. You fall awake as that's just
like
brilliant.
drifting. Yep.
Yep. You don't. Yeah. You fall into your waking life. You don't. You don't approach it with energy and enthusiasm. That's just a great line.
Yeah.
But I think it's about drudgery. But there is I believe there's hope at the end.
Yes.
Acoustically, it's fantastic. It's one of the most complex acoustic pieces he plays. I've had an attempt at it, and I'm not up there yet. It's just very intricate, very, very. The arpeggio work in it is incredible, and that was very evident when we saw him live. He plays it very. It's a very high key. I think when he plays on a standard guitar, the capo is right up on the 7th fret or the 6th fret or something, or he plays it with a very small concert acoustic, which is tuned very high anyway. But it's just it's his most impressive acoustic.
And again, the use of
performance
use of strings, right?
Yes, which I presume is deep Dharma.
Yeah,
Not mentioned. So
But it's just, yeah.
Barrymore Barlow gets his first run out.
Oh yes, so this was after Clive had left. So, and Clive didn't leave under a cloud. I think Clive Barker left.
Bunker.
Clive Barker. Clive Barker was always under a cloud. Clive Bunker left because he wanted to get married. And they were all very sad to see. They were all very sad to see him go.
Yeah.
I think he was very well.
Would marry a percussionist.
Very well loved.
Sure,
Yes,
he
I
didn't
don't
explode.
Like, yes.
And then the other one choked on vomit. Oh,
Whoever she was, she was very impressed that he could last for a 20-minute drum solo.
That's Dharma, man.
Sorry. Not trying to be smutty or anything, but anyway.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song though, and I'm just still thinking about the EP. I mean, I know they could have been the kernel of an EP, but certainly "Thick as a Brick" certainly set them on a very iconic in its own way.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and we'll obviously.
So it's interesting how things could have gone. We could have gotten more Aqualungy kind of album.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think we could have, but we'll get into that.
I think these songs are a progression of that. I think they're a much more mature development of that, and maybe that's where we were going. But anyway,
yeah, it seems like just a progression rather than evolution, and obviously you wanted evolution at this stage.
So are we
going up the pool?
Up the pool. Now, I have a question to ask at the beginning here.
Yep.
And you guys might not be able to answer it, but I want to know what a freaky weekend is and how I can get on one.
So, and Blackpool. It's like Blackpool. It's like the Las Vegas of the north of England. If you've never been there, it's basically a gaudy strip along the waterfront. I wouldn't say beach, with piers, amusement piers, with like bingo machines and slot machines and all that kind of thing. And backing the road is like Madame Tussauds and every tacky sort of touristy thing you can think of.
It's like our Gold Coast, right?
And they have like special shows on, like they had circus performers and strongmen. There was a guy who was very famous for a while for flying over the audience. He'd like strap things very sort of like a Tarzan strongman type with full makeup, and he'd strap these leather thongs to his wrists and then go flying out over the audience. And he performed there for years, donkey's years. So it's this kind of very lowbrow tourist.
The Golden Mile. Oh, it was the Golden Mile. Oh, lovely.
So that was a thing. That's not just descriptive. That was actually a title of a.
It was called the Golden Mile, yeah.
Right.
Because they'd have the illuminations when it goes dark. Along the Golden Mile, there'd just be like lights, fairy lights and whatever lights with a theme for the year. And they'd just be set up down the Golden Mile. And people go and walk down the Golden Mile and go, oh, look, it's a snowman in lights. Oh, look, now it's a woman on a broom in lights. I wonder what that could be.
But that's the difference right there. And I think that's why using the US or Australia as a reference breaks down, because Blackpool is close to very large groups of working class, and that's where our grandparents came from.
Did you impressionable young boys? Also, your grandparents were there. So did you spend time in Blackpool?
Yeah. We used to get taken for the illuminations.
Yeah. And if you worked in a mill, if you worked in the industrial northwest, and you were there from 14, you left school and you were doing that, you would get this opportunity to go to Blackpool on the Sharabang or whatever. Yeah. And to us, in our eyes, it seems like awful. But that was, for a working class person at that time, would have been. It
was sort of weirdly tacky but fantastic. Wholesome somehow, and lots of people eating fish and chips. And I mentioned earlier, like the Kiss Me Quick hats. For some reason, everyone wears a hat that says Kiss Me Quick, and it sort of gives you an excuse, like kissing under the mistletoe kind of thing, to give someone a quick peck on the cheek. So it's risque in a very sort of wholesome and whatever way.
Yeah.
An actual real Blackpool is, again, a bit like Las Vegas, I suppose. There's like probably a place where Ian Anderson probably grew up, which is totally divorced from this weird tourist strip and where normal people would have lived.
The tone of it is interesting because I feel like it's sort of a mocking of this sort of ludicrous cavalcade of visitors, but there's also an affectionate element. So by the time of this, by the time the whole Blackpool crew was back together by this stage, so Barrymore Barlow and Jeffrey Hammond, and there's almost a nostalgic feel to it.
There is.
It's not just a sort of a mocking observation.
But there's the things like the iron tower swells down upon the silver, and then he pauses. See,
because it's supposed to be this big beachside attraction, but the sea is absolutely awful. You wouldn't. It's freezing cold. It's a pebble beach. There's it
used to be quite polluted
stuff as well. But then
we're so spoiled here. Our beaches are beaches are just magnificent, and But there's a very.
There's a pride there too. Yeah,
it's very much like Mother Goose. It's very folk heavy. Yep. Folky. Yeah. It's very British. There's a very strong sense of place. I get, even though I've never been to Blackpool, I get a very strong sense of place from listening to it.
What's the guy saying at the end? What's he saying at the end?
Get out of here, Black Cauldron.
Get out Black. Is it get out Black Velvet? What does that mean? That's what he says, isn't it?
Get out of the Blackpool? I don't know.
I thought he said get out Black Velvet, which makes no sense.
Why would you say that?
I don't. It's Jeffrey Hammond. Who knows why?
He's saying get out Dr. Bogan Broom. That's what he was saying.
Now, this is interesting, and maybe this has something to do with my own personal outlook, but I actually think this was about a doctor, and I don't think it is.
No.
Well, it's about someone who's dying, isn't it? Who has to go and see the doctor. Yeah. Isn't it about someone who's dying? Who's got some terminal illness?
I always assumed it was euthanasia, basically, because he's got one foot in the graveyard and the other's on the bus heading to see the doctor and his magic pills. And everyone else is all the passengers are on this bus, like the We Want to Die bus, are trampling each other in the rush to get the magic pills. So.
Yeah. I don't think so. I think Dr. Bogan...
it's about Bogans.
That's about sweeping the floor.
How did he know about Bogans?
What do you think it's about, Brad? You don't think it's about euthanasia or death?
I think it is about death and dying. I think it's about inevitable death forced on you by society. I don't think Dr. Bogenbroom's a doctor. I think Dr. Bogenbroom is what's down there. I think Dr. Bogenbroom is the devil.
Oh, it's the devil. It's the religious stuff.
Oh, I see. I'm going down 3 cheers for Dr. Bogenbroom.
Yeah, to me, I'm going down 3 cheers because I've used his magic pill to send me down.
The pill, the pill.
Pass the super pill. Yeah,
I don't think it's
Yeah. Why if Dr. Bogenbroom was the devil, why would he have a super pill to give you?
Well, the devil tempts with what?
If it's a suppository, I suppose. That way you've got to literally pass the super pill.
The devil tempts with what you think you want and need. But I know I look. This is obviously about. Yes, it's about death because he's got 1 foot in the graveyard and 1 foot on the bus, and the bus is full of the people who are. The bus of society, impersonality, the selfish, blinkered, lack of care for the
they're hypocrites and whores
of individuals.
The hypocrites and whores are just normal people, aren't they?
Yes.
I mean, because they're just, he says he's tried his best to love them all, but they've got their eyes on each other and locks upon the doors. They're suspicious. It's just like, again, talking about society in general. It's not specifically everyone's a hypocrite and a whore, I guess, for the subject of the song.
Yeah.
No, I used to think that was because I thought this was actually about a doctor, because it can be a thankless profession, right? It can be extremely emotionally and physically wearing without much appreciation, and that was a very personal thing for me to think, obviously. But obviously, looking at the lyrics now, I don't think that. I think it's about the impersonality and the lack of care for the individual and the selfishness in society and
it's definitely that aspect.
And
Yes,
the
definitely.
escape, and that's the
Absolutely.
bus, right? With all of these hypocrites and whores on it, and this poor person is stuck halfway between death and being on this hell bus, and the only offer of the way out of it is what he who's down there offers, which is a pill.
Is that really a way out?
It almost feels like euthanasia, the pill, and you're right about that.
Well, or could it be how those that one of the things society does, because the extended family and sort of interpersonal breakdown is that we medicate people who are suffering. It's the way that we help them manage. If they are in that situation where there may be a terminal illness or something, we have these pills, but it doesn't replace that kind of interpersonal broad connection that people have. So if people are lonely and they are suffering, it's all very well to give them the pills, but it doesn't take away the emotional distress that they may feel. You know what I mean? And I wonder whether he's trying to kind of, again, this is a critique of society, like you say, is it's all very well that, we have these ways of helping people and solving their pain or giving them pills, but it doesn't give them connection or human connection that they might desire or need. I don't know. I wonder whether it's something about. I mean, it's not clear what it's absolutely about.
And to me, it's totally clear because I like being right. But the one line that I just go, what? And this gets me every time is, and the chicken-hearted lawman is throwing up his fill. I mean, what?
I don't know what that means.
No, I don't know. I'm lost. For once, I'm lost.
Yeah, I think it's got some quite surreal kind of lyrics.
I love some of the lyrics. It does. The verse is fantastic. It just this is one song where I feel the chorus lets down a bit because it's a bit anticlimactic, because the verse really feels like it's, and maybe that's intentional, is that life feels like it might be something that should build to something special, and it's anticlimactic. But the verse is really good, and that second verse particularly. You drown me in the fountain of life, and I
hated you. Yeah,
I hated you. No, I used to think it was I needed you, which I thought was really effective. You drown me in the fountain of life, and I needed you.
Yes, that would have been better. You should contact Ian and get him a time machine.
What was he thinking? He should have checked with me.
Yeah,
I was only 5 years old, but he should have checked.
So is 3 Cheers for Dr. Bogan Broom ironic? Or is it...
I don't know. Good song. I like it.
Yeah.
Whatever it's about.
3 cheers for Dr. Bogan Broom, I say.
For later.
Yeah, whatever. I'm not big on instrumentals. Yeah, it's fine.
It's quite jazzy. It's got a bit of a soul and funk feel to it. There's a bit of wah-wah guitar in it. And
He sang a bit about chicken-hearted lawmen or something. I'd like it, but no.
So okay, anything else?
Not much so bad. I don't mind it either.
Don't mind it. All right.
It just leaves one of the worst acoustic pieces ever written.
Nursie. See, I really feel like this would... I didn't realise that they recorded this after Aqualung, because I always thought it would have gone so well in Aqualung.
Again, that was not the purpose of Aqualung. It was to make... the purpose was to make an acoustic album, but I think it was intentionally about variety and texture, and to make it all acoustic would have defeated that purpose. And I think it would have been a lesser album for that. But... it could have been on the grand new album that they never finished, which was this one.
Possibly. I've heard the theory that this Nursie is the same person on the Preston platform, Nurse, which... Although
it seems that he's the patient in this case.
Yes.
So.
Well, it would be talking about Aqualung, who he put Aqualung away into the home, and then Aqualung's there being looked after by the Nursie.
See, I always assumed that it was just... it was like a child's nurse looking after him, but I guess because of the childish name Nursie and whatever. So that's how the lens I always saw it through. It's just like a kid with their sort of nurse who would look after them. But yeah, I can see there's no reason to really think that either way based on the lyrics. But it's quite a simple and sort of lovely and childish song.
Little acoustic interludes that we've already come to experience. Will we ever... It's hard to know because there's nothing brief coming up on the next two albums.
Now we have a brief 45-minute
song. A lot of acoustic work, but not these brief. And I don't know that we will encounter them again, although he tends to, later on they end their albums. Well, no, exactly.
It's under wraps.
Yes. But no. But
the acoustic
these brief little ones, he does end, like Grace, for example, and Cheerio. They start to end their albums with these very brief little acoustic things, but they're not used as
warm sporran
interludes. But this ends this album, so
yes, it does.
It's a kind of a strange, it's kind of a bit of a quiet way to finish such a amazing album.
Just let you drift off in reverie.
It's fine. Yeah, sure.
It's a nice little acoustic piece again.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't feel like a link to Cheap Day Return, because it really feels like the person singing is actually the patient this time. And I don't...
no, it doesn't. But it's in the same style as...
it is,
so
absolutely.
Yeah, and it's lovely.
I don't know what it's saying, but...
It's just saying having a nurse is good.
Yeah.
Nurse, 3 cheers for Nursie
Bogenbroom, yes.
Yes, Dr. Bogenbroom's
yes, assistant.
So yes, this is someone who's ill. They think life's a long song. They go to Blackpool. They meet Dr. Bogenbroom,
who gives them the super pill,
and then later they
get the pill, and there is no later.
It's an EP, a concept album.
That's
what we were missing. Oh my God, it is
the only band who've ever done a concept EP. All right, so summing up Living in the Past, I do love this album. As I've said, it obviously wasn't constructed as an album in the way the others were, but I think an album can be coherent in other ways, and I think this is a real document and a great legacy for this period of Jethro Tull, and it's my favourite period. And as you've said, Robin, I think you could present this album to people if you wanted to say, this is why I love Jethro Tull. You could present this album to them. Some fantastic singles. There are parts of it that don't make sense. Maybe some of the choices for the live material. But it's a very satisfying listen from beginning to end, and there's a lot of very interesting music on it and some great, iconic Jethro Tull songs that are amongst the best they ever wrote. And it was also very important to me as an entree to this period of Jethro Tull. Without Living in the Past, I might never have gotten past some of their later music, and I probably might not have ended up being the Jethro Tull fan I am without this album.
You wouldn't be on this podcast.
Exactly. But it led me to stand up and benefit in Aqualung. And so it's a very important album for me because of that, but it does stand on its own as well. So it's going to get good rating from me.
Yeah, and for me it's a very good album. Lots of high points, a few less high points, but it holds together, remarkably well. And I think if I was told you can only have one single Jethro Tull album with you, I'd probably pick this just because of the variety of very good music on it. It does cover off a lot of bases, which maybe my favourite ever album is a bit more narrowly focused, and it's great for all of that. But if I want a sort of a broad spread of Jethro Tull music, as you say, or if you want to introduce someone, it's a fantastic CV of here's our music, here's what we're about over this golden period of Jethro Tull.
Well, I don't know much more that I can say, really. I mean, you guys have said how awesome it is, and it is a fantastic album. It's an iconic album, I think, from my perspective. I don't think it's an iconic album necessarily from a, from a broad musical perspective, but it certainly is for me. And there's not many of those sorts of albums. Like I said, it as I said at the beginning, I think it's, it's not just what's on it, where some of the best Jethro Tull tracks are on it, but it's also what it represents, and it represented an ending of sorts, an end of an era, and things would be very different after this album. So it's not just a collection of songs; it's really kind of the distillation of an amazing 3 or 4 years. That's all. Quite incredible, and
it seems like almost like a summing up of this first era, doesn't it? Yeah.
It is. It is absolutely. It really does represent the classical Jethro Tull era in a wonderful way.
Without just rehashing and repeating the albums.
Exactly. Without rehashing and
without rehashing and repeating.
Exactly. And so from that perspective, I mean, Witch's Promise, The Teacher, Alive and Well and Living In are all on here. Wond'ring again, particularly. I mean, even those songs alone, like you said before, Brent, those whole albums could have revolved around those, and they're all here on this. It's not surprising that it gets practically huge ratings by critics as well. It's a bit of a pity actually that it's not more well known than it actually is. When I think about it, and you think about classic rock album,
that it didn't win a Grammy Award.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess because it's a compilation album, it maybe gets left off people sort of, I mean, Aqualung probably gets pulled out and sort of brandished as the, an iconic rock album. It's a bit of a pity, I think. It's a bit sad, really, that this doesn't. It gets sort of put aside as just a mere compilation best of, and I think that really undersells it really quite terribly, because I think it does stand alone as an album.
All right, Jeffries. 4.5 for me.
Okay, well, easy for me. 5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah. I'll give it 4.5. And some of the stuff on it is things I don't really want to listen to much, but as a whole package, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
4.5.
There's going to be a challenge for any album to beat that sort of consensual.
Yes, it'll have to be something really good.
Love for this album, but
well, I suppose discussing this album would always have had us living in the past. I'm Adrian.
I'm Brent.
And I'm Robin.
Cheerio.
See you next time.
Bye. So thank you very much for listening. If you would like to leave us any comments, or you would like to subscribe to this podcast, and we sincerely hope you do, there's a number of ways you can do that. You can find this podcast at www.threethickbricks.com. You can also hit us up on the Facebook page, which is at 3 Thick Bricks Podcast. And you could also send us a Gmail if you really want to at 3thickbricks@gmail.com. And all of those details will, of course, be in the show notes. So next time on 3 Thick Bricks, we'll be looking at the also iconic Thick as a Brick. And Brent, Adrian, and myself are very much looking forward to chatting about that real concept album. But until then, I'm Robin. Thanks so much for listening, and goodbye.